Snow fell hard that night, thick enough to bury secrets. From the diner window I saw her, Linda, my wife of 30 years, stepping out of room 6 at the Timberline Inn. Her coat half-zipped, eyes wide, guilt written louder than words. She pressed her key fob once, twice. Nothing. Her car was gone. I didn't move, didn't shout, just watched. Because sometimes silence cuts deeper than any scream. 2 hours later, her car sat neatly in our driveway, clean, untouched, keys on the kitchen table beside my wedding ring. That's when she knew. I hadn't stolen her car. I'd taken back my name. You think you'd yell, right? Smash something? But at 60 you learn, revenge isn't noise, it's control. And this was just the beginning. Hit subscribe if you've ever been betrayed. Because what comes next will make every man ask himself, how much trust can you lose before you lose yourself? The quiet after the motel hit harder than any argument. I stood by the fireplace, listening to the wood pop and split, watching my breath turn white in the room I built. The wall clock ticked like a slow hammer, each second asking the same question. Are you going to blow up, or are you going to be a man? Headlights slid across the blinds. A taxi rolled to a stop. She stepped out, shoulders tucked into her coat like a secret. I didn't meet her at the door. I let the house speak first. The warm lamp, the clean table, the keys beside my wedding ring, both sitting dead center on the wood I sanded smooth. She reached for the keys, stopped halfway, and saw the ring. You ever watch somebody misstep on a stair that isn't there? She pulled back a half step, hand hovering, eyes trying to rewrite the night. I kept breathing. The clock kept talking, and the distance between us stopped pretending. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't explain. I gave her the only words that still belonged to me. I know. She blinked, mouth open, my name on her lips. The wrong name first. That told me more than any speech. I didn't invite a conversation. I pulled my coat on and walked past her, down the short hall to the shop door. The hinge sighed like an old friend. The heater woke, the smell of dust and winter lifting off the tools. She called my name again, right this time, softer, like a hand searching for a rail in the dark. I put my palm flat against the door and closed it. There's a way a door can shut without slamming, and still shake a house. In the shop, the silence filled every corner and left no chair for a lie to sit in. Out there, she had words. In here, I had work. The lock clicked once. That was the loudest thing I said all night. Pine dust hung in the light like slow snow. The radio found a low country station that never rushes anybody. My hand found the chair arm I'd been sanding all week, and I could feel the ridges, the places I'd promised to smooth. Funny what shows up when a man is alone with his tools. I saw our first apartment again, thin walls, a mattress on the floor, burning pancakes because we didn't own a timer. I saw the day we signed the mortgage and swore we'd finish the upstairs by Christmas. And did. Saturday ball games, Sunday church, 1,000 small repairs that made a household. Somewhere between paying the light bill and fixing the gutters, I stopped being her husband and turned into something that just sat there. Sturdy, quiet, useful, invisible. My fingers found a rough spot on the wood and didn't rush it. I sanded with the grain until the whisper changed. In that sound, I heard it clearly. I'd become the furniture. She came to the shop doorway, voice small and practiced. Bad roads, dead battery, lost signal. I didn't argue. I looked at her heels, dry as a sermon on a hot Sunday. Not a speck of road salt, not a lick of slush. The wall clock kept tapping its truth into the room, and my hands didn't shake. Men like me know when to grab a wrench and when to measure twice. I set the sandpaper down, wiped my palms on a rag, and let the lies hang there without a hook to catch. We can talk in the morning, I said, even though the conversation had already happened on a kitchen table with 2 small objects. She waited for me to explode so she could call it a scene. I didn't. I chose to learn. Quiet doesn't mean weak. Quiet means I'm collecting facts. Tonight I measured the grain of the problem. Tomorrow I'd start cutting. And when I cut, it would be square. Morning brought the smell of burned batter. She scraped the black off pancakes like you can fix a marriage with syrup. I sat, watched the smoke fade, and listened to the fork touch the plate. She said the words she thought I needed. I'm sorry. It was nothing. We can fix this. Men my age don't need fireworks. We need solid ground. I gave a slow nod. One chance, I said. Not because I believed her, but because I needed to believe I'd done everything a decent man does before he closes a door. Her shoulders dropped. Mine didn't. Forgiveness, provisional, hung between us like a truce written in pencil. I took a sip of coffee that tasted like last night's ash and set the mug down on the table I built when our daughter was 5. I would keep my word. I would watch. I would measure. And the second that line was crossed again, I'd erase that truce clean. That truce in pencil started smudging by lunchtime. Her phone buzzed in short bursts, the kind you pretend not to hear. She stepped into the hallway for work stuff, whispering like the walls might tattle. I didn't chase. I counted. 12:17, 12:31, 12:46, steady as a metronome in my shop. Men who build learn to watch the pattern before they cut. You don't fight the grain, you read it. I stacked the times in my head like shims, one after another, until they stopped wobbling. When she came back, her smile looked store-bought. I wiped the counter, slow, let the silence measure the room. Discipline is a habit you carry from wood to life. Slow hands, clean lines, no rush to ruin. She wanted chaos. Noise makes a good smokescreen. I gave her order. By dinner, the ring sat where I left it, the keys still quiet, and a clean row of times ran through my mind like chalk marks on a board, waiting for the saw. By morning, she needed groceries and disappeared for 3 straight hours. I didn't pace. I pulled the roll-top desk open, the same one that holds our mortgage, tax receipts, and the little map of our life. Summer was missing, like a season cut out with scissors. June, July, August gone. Men my age keep paper because paper tells the truth. I opened the laptop we share, told myself I was looking for a counselor, something to make this mess survivable. Her email was still signed in, which felt less like a door and more like a light left on. I didn't dig, I scrolled. And there it was at the top, bright as a hazard light on a dark road. 2 more weeks, baby. My hand didn't shake. The refrigerator hummed like a distant engine. Outside, a pickup rolled past the house, ordinary as a Sunday. I clicked once and braced the way you brace a board before the blade bites. The cut was coming. The words hit in short, ugly lines. He bought it. Counseling buys time. Small pulls he never checks. Withdrawals labeled household, errands, every Thursday for 18 months, 50 here, 800 there, 1,000 in January when I worked overtime. The money hurt, but it wasn't the worst wound. That came quiet. One sentence leaning sideways like a joke. Living with him is like living with furniture. I stared at it until the letters stopped twitching. Funny how a cheap word can weigh more than a bill. I make chairs that hold a family through long nights. I build tables that survive birthdays and bad news. Furniture doesn't complain, it stays. But being called furniture? That's a way of saying a man can be useful and not seen. I closed the lid for a breath, not to hide from the truth, but to hold it steady. Then I opened it again. I wasn't done. Not with the emails, not with the math, not with myself. She came in late with a plastic bag that held more excuses than food. Before she could set the story, she swung first. You went through my private stuff. That's illegal. I didn't rise. I slid the laptop to the center of the kitchen table like a measure block and squared it with the edge. Joint computer, I said. Joint account. Joint truth. Sit. The words came clean, no extra nails. She hovered, then sat. I didn't rehearse a speech. I opened the inbox and let the subject line stand there under the light. Bright, loud, undeniable. The house got small. The clock got loud. We both watched the same screen and ran out of places to hide. Men who yell lose the room. Men who are clear keep it. I kept it. She reached for the lid. I held it open with 2 fingers. We're not guessing tonight, I told her. We're reading. The ring and the keys didn't move. Neither did I. I opened each email like a road flare. Click, then pointed with a carpenter's finger. Dates, times, amounts. Thursday after Thursday. 50, 800, 1100. Not rage, not yet. Just the steady weight of numbers doing what numbers do. She tried for sympathy, then smoke, then silence. The screen didn't blink for any of it. I stacked the facts like boards, flush and square, no gaps to slip through. Counseling buys time, I read. He signs whatever I put in front of him. My jaw worked once and stopped. Men who work with their hands know when something is level. This was level. She swallowed, eyes shining in a way that didn't help. I let the quiet stand there until it felt like truth had filled the room to the corners. Then I gave her the only question that mattered, clean as a pencil line across new wood. How much? The fridge hummed. The clock ticked. And there was nowhere left for the lie to sit. I didn't raise my voice. I raised the paperwork. I spread the bank statements across the kitchen table I built when Sarah was 5, edge to edge like shingles before a storm. The highlighter bled yellow across the page, blooming like bruises. Thursday, Thursday, Thursday. 50, 800, 1,000. The calculator thumped a steady beat under my thumb while the fridge hummed back up and the clock kept time. Men who work with their hands trust what they can measure. I lined columns, checked dates, carried numbers like boards from truck to saw. She watched, small in a chair we bought on layaway, waiting for Mercy to change the math. It didn't. The total climbed, slow at first, then like a bad hill in winter, $18,200, $26,400, $30,900. I kept going. My breath got tight, but my hands stayed steady. When the last line landed, the room stopped moving. I set the calculator down as if it could break. $47,000. The number sat there, plain as a nailhead you can't unsee. She reached for feelings the way some folks reach for coupons at the register. Age, loneliness, wanting to feel alive. I nodded once. Those are reasons, not choices. Men my age don't hate reasons. We just know they don't fix a ledger. I pushed my chair back and felt the scrape in my bones. There are moments a house learns a new rule. This was one. I'm not sleeping in that room tonight, I said. No thunder, no sermon, just a line chalked straight. Her mouth opened, then shut, searching for a door that wasn't there. Boundaries aren't punishment, they're the rails that keep a train on track. I grabbed a clean sheet for the spare room and folded it flat like a promise I meant to keep. If she wanted noise, she wasn't getting it from me. She was getting a boundary a man could lean on. The hallway felt longer than usual, but my step didn't waver. Some lines you draw with a pencil, some you cut in oak. The porch boards were cold through my socks, the kind of cold that tells the truth. I found a forgotten cigarette in the back of a drawer, one of those break glass in case of emergency mistakes, and lit it with a hand that didn't shake. Smoke hit like a bad memory and I let it go. The wind chimes on Doris's porch argued with the winter. A screen door squeaked. Tom didn't knock, he just sat, the way real friends do when words would only make a mess. He passed me a second smoke and a look that said I wasn't crazy. What now? He asked without asking. I stared at the dark yard until the shape of an answer stood up. He reached in his pocket and slid over a card. Plain, white, solid as a 2x4. Janet Cruz. Fairfield. She's tough. She's fair, he said. I turned the card like a carpenter checks a joint. No wobble. The night didn't get warmer, but it got clearer. I was up before the alarm, coffee black and honest, the house quiet in the way that helps a man think. At 7 sharp, I dialed the number on the card. Janet Cruz, a voice said, straight as a level. I told her the short version. No drama, just dates and dollars. She didn't gasp or gossip. She measured. Come in today, she said. And don't tip your wife. The words landed like a brace on a sagging beam. Men who fix things know urgency when we hear it. I wrote the time on an envelope and tucked the card behind my license. Identity and direction, side by side. Outside, the frost drew its own plans on the window glass, and for the first time since the motel, I felt the floor under me hold. There's relief in orders you can follow. Be calm, be thorough, be quiet. I killed the cigarette pack, poured the coffee to the line, and got to work. But before the day was over, I'd learn, silence has rules of its own. I treated the kitchen like a job site, evidence first, feelings later. I photographed every page, top left, center, bottom right, so order couldn't be argued. I labeled manila envelopes in block letters the way I label lumber: checking, savings, Visa, receipts. I circled withdrawals we both knew weren't groceries, and printed the worst emails until the tray coughed them up like confessions. The roll-top desk became a staging bench. The briefcase from Sarah's college loan meeting came down from the closet shelf and didn't complain. Men who build know the comfort of a checklist: stack, staple, seal. I slid the ring and the keys back to the middle of the table and took one picture of them too, because symbols matter when truth goes to court. When everything had a place and every place had proof, something in my chest clicked, like a latch finding home. This wasn't rage anymore. This was work. And work, I know how to finish. I thought that was enough preparation, until the photo came through that night. By noon, I was in Janet's office, polished wood that smelled faintly of lemon polish and peppermint, degrees on the wall that didn't need to shout. She listened like a contractor measuring a door frame. Quick, exact, no fuss. Then she drew the map. 2 words you'll hear, she said. Dissipation, when marital money goes missing. Fraud, when it funds an affair. No drama, just definitions a man can carry. Here's the plan, she went on. Freeze what's left. Temporary orders on assets. Inventory everything. We work clean, we work quiet. I nodded because that's how you fix a crooked room. You square it at the corners. She slid a retainer across the desk. 5,000. Not chump change for a man who counts receipts for sandpaper, but I recognized an investment when I saw one. Not in vengeance, in dignity. I signed, the pen leaving a small trench in the paper, and felt the floor under me stop tilting. Authority had a shape now, and it fit. But not everything that fits stays level for long. We went over her rules like a checklist on a job site. 3 things, Janet said, fingers up. Do not alert your wife. Do not confront the other man. Document everything. Simple as hard, but it holds. That night, the heater clicked off early, one of those silences that makes a man hear his own heartbeat. I stood by the window, saw her car parked neat, no headlights, no sound. For a second, I thought, maybe she's home early, maybe Mercy still fits. Then my phone buzzed. Unknown number, 1 photo. Her, same coat, same room. That Mercy folded itself right back into the drawer. Boundaries aren't cruelty. They're proof you respect what's worth keeping. I turned off the light. Some lessons you don't need twice. Except this one was coming back, before sunrise. That night, Tom showed up with a thermos, a Nikon, and the face he wears for funerals and furnace repairs. We worked the house like 2 old adjusters. Click the living room, click the dining table, click the mantle where holidays used to live. The shop took the longest. I called out each tool so the camera heard it. DeWalt planer, Craftsman lathe, cedar stock, 8 boards, 4/4. But the photo in my pocket kept whispering. I didn't show Tom. Some wounds rot faster in air. The heater kicked once, the kind of sound you mistake for footsteps. I looked up too fast. He caught the look, didn't ask. You okay? Just measuring. Sometimes that's how men say they're not. Headlights washed across the porch, too early for her, too late for neighbors. 2 doors shut. Laughter first, then a voice I'd only heard through speakers. Mark. She wasn't supposed to bring him here. Tom froze, hand halfway to his camera. Don't, I said. Not yet. The latch on the front gate clicked, an old sound, suddenly sharp. They stopped short at the porch, whispers cutting, realizing the lights were still on. I stood in the doorway, half shadow, half truth. Private property, I said, voice flat as a level. Mark's grin thinned. Didn't think anyone was home. I built this home, I said. That was enough. Or so I thought, until the town started talking. The next morning, word was already running through Maple Creek like wind through fence slats. At the diner, conversations stopped 2 beats late. Doris poured coffee slower, like sympathy she couldn't name. Reputations a tax men like me pay in installments. By noon, Sarah called, her voice tight, already half believing the wrong version. Dad, what are you doing? I wanted to explain everything, the photo, the gate, the laughter, but explanations sound like excuses over the phone. Just keeping things straight, I said. She says you're angry. I'm careful, I answered. Careful costs, though. It costs the benefit of the doubt. So I did the hardest thing for a man who wants answers. I kept quiet. But silence isn't always peace. It's work. Every hour since that porch light, the town had been sanding my name. I didn't flinch. I made coffee, filed proof, waited for Thursday. The plan still held. The heart still didn't. By late afternoon, Tom and I were sorting copies on the porch table, coffee steaming, papers squared, when headlights swung into the yard. Not hers alone, his, right behind. Mark stepped out first, boots in my grass, jaw high like he owned air he hadn't paid for. I stood slow. Private property, I said, voice flat as a level. He took 2 more steps. Tom didn't blink. He just set his thermos down like a quiet witness. Back up, I told him, or I call the sheriff. That word travels different in small towns. It has boots. It has memory. He smirked, then looked past me at the house I built. He wasn't the biggest thing here, not tonight. Porch lights clicked on up and down Maple Creek like a row of eyes opening. Crowds change men. Loud gets small. Truth doesn't need volume. It just needs a witness. Morning brought a different kind of knock. My phone lit with Sarah's name. Her words came coached, careful, already warmed by her mother's version. Dad, what are you doing? She says you changed the locks. She says you're not yourself. Men our age learn a hard rule. Defend too much and you sound guilty. Say too little and you sound cold. I took a breath. I'm okay, I said. There are things I can't explain yet. I just need you to trust me a little longer. Silence on the line. A daughter weighing 2 stories and hoping neither breaks her. I didn't race to fill the gap. I let the quiet carry my promise the way a good board carries weight. No bow, no squeak. Please don't do anything stupid, she whispered. I won't, I said, and meant it twice. When I hung up, the kitchen felt bigger and emptier. I let that ache sit. You can't rush a cure, you can only hold the line. I still went to the diner. Routine keeps a man upright. The bell over the door told everyone I was there before I did. 2 old boys near the paint shaker gossip tried to look past me and failed. The kid bagging salt wouldn't meet my eye. Doris slid a mug down like a short prayer. Hang in there, honey. That traveled the room faster than the steam off my coffee. Some faces offered nods, some offered knives. I let both pass. Reputation in a small town is lumber you think you own until a storm tests it. I ate my eggs, tipped decent, and left the plate clean because that's how I was raised. On the way out, a man I'd fixed brakes for once said, "Proud of you," under his breath. Another muttered, "Coward." Both bounced off. The grain was set. You test wood by loading it and listening. I walked to the truck, felt for cracks, and heard none. The diner noise followed me home like gravel in my boots, and by afternoon she wanted a private talk, without Tom. We stood in the kitchen where birthdays used to happen, and she aimed first. You're destroying everything, changing locks, turning people against me. I didn't chase the bait. I slid the folders toward the light. Dates, withdrawals, the email that said counseling was just cover. Men our age know blame when we hear it. It always arrives early and loud. She tried for weariness, that shortcut through responsibility. I kept my hands flat on the table I built. This isn't me breaking a home, I said, voice low and steady. This is me refusing to pretend a wound isn't there. She flinched, then pushed for pity like it could change math. I pointed once, gentle but final. Cruelty, I told her, is denying the injury and calling it love. The room went still. You could hear the clock breathe. For the first time, her eyes left mine and found the papers. An hour later, my phone buzzed with a name that still steadies me. Sarah. A photo filled the screen. My old letters, thin paper, blue ink bleeding at the edges from a life we were just starting. Did you write these, Dad? She typed. I leaned on the counter and felt 25 again, broke and proud and sure that showing up could fix anything. Yeah, I answered. I did. Another message. I want to hear your side. That cracked something warm into a cold day. I told her to come by, no speeches, just coffee and time. Men like me don't need to win a debate with our daughters. We need to be worth their drive. I set the phone down and stared at the chair I'd built for her when she was 5, the one that still doesn't wobble. The house didn't feel so empty. Hope doesn't kick the door in. It eases it open from the hinge side, quiet and sure. Before dawn, Janet's call came like a level tapping true. "Temporary restraints are granted," she said. "Assets locked. Follow the checklist." I wrote it on a yellow sticky like a hardware list. Civil, thorough, document. No victory music, just clean orders a man can carry. I walked to the stairs I built when Sarah was 12, oak treads, no squeak, and placed my hand on the rail. It felt like a promise I'd kept to a future that still deserved one. Some days you drift, some days you nail the frame to the foundation. I looked down the hall, past the spare room, back to the kitchen table spread with files, and said it out loud so the walls would remember. Today, we finish what needs finishing. The coffee tasted less bitter after that. Not sweet, just honest. There's comfort in a plan that doesn't ask you to be loud, only steady. I pocketed the order, rolled my shoulders square, and started the work. Tom was already halfway across the yard with a toolbox when I opened the door. We worked without commentary. New deadbolts on the front, back, and the side door nobody uses. The click of each screw sounded like a boundary falling into place. Inside, I packed her things like a guest room, not a battlefield. Dresses folded, shoes matched, toiletries zipped. The suitcases sat on the porch with handles out, rain covers buckled, dignity on purpose. I taped a thick manila envelope to the front door, her name in block letters, and tucked inside copies of the emails, bank statements with yellow scars, the cabin lease, and the court order. The camera on my phone recorded every room, every angle. No rage, just record. Men who build know the comfort of completion. When the last photo saved, Tom poured coffee into 2 chipped mugs. We sat in the rocking chairs I made the year my mother died. The house exhaled. The file, our file, was finally whole. Headlights swept the yard at sunset. She saw the suitcases first, then the envelope, then me not moving. Her face went pale the way truth drains a person. Papers slid out like a deck stacked against denial. Subject lines that glowed, withdrawals that marched, a lease by the lake with her name beside his. She started grabbing for a story that might still sell. Privacy, invasion, you can't just... I didn't raise my voice. I didn't list every hurt. I put one word down like a tool on a bench. Marital fraud. It didn't need an echo. The court letter on county paper did the rest. She looked at the seal like it might blink. "This is my house too," she tried. I nodded at the deed copy, the inventory, the serial numbers. "It's ours," I said, "which is why the court locked it down." The porch didn't creak. The street didn't breathe. Law isn't loud. It's heavy. Tonight, the weight finally sat where it belonged. She tried to plant her feet in the doorway. "This is my house too." I didn't argue the air. I pointed to the court order, plain county letterhead, case number, signatures that carry weight. Then the inventory with serial numbers neat as fence posts. Tools, clock, titles, every piece with a place. No shouting, no threats, just the heft of paper that doesn't blink. Men who build know the strength of simple, 4 screws, 1 bracket, job done. I let the silence hold longer than her temper could. The porch light hummed. The ring of my key against the frame sounded like a gavel hitting wood. You can feel when the balance shifts. It's like a floor joist catching a load it was made to carry. Her jaw worked, but the room stopped taking her side. The house itself felt colder, not mean, measured. When the law sits down, it doesn't raise its voice. It just leans. And that lean finally fell on her, not me. Gravel spit, and the lifted truck tried to make a point before he did. Mark hopped out, big strides across my grass like a dog off its leash. I didn't stand off. I reached into my coat and handed him the second envelope, his copy. No speeches. He tore it open, eyes skimming, and I watched the color back away from his face like a tide that knew better. Fraud report. Case number. Copies to the prosecutor. He looked up for a lifeline. I gave him proof. I raised my phone so he could read the text from my attorney, time-stamped and clean. "File stamped," I said. 2 words. No heat. Paper beats swagger every single time. He tried a laugh that didn't have legs, a shrug that didn't fit his jacket. I kept my hands in my pockets and my boots on my own ground. In small towns, truth doesn't travel fast. It settles, and it had just settled on him. I didn't need volume. I needed leverage. "Does your wife know?" I asked, like a man checking level. Just a question, but it finds tilt. He blinked. "Sharon." The name came out bent. Porch lights popped on up and down the street, little moons announcing an audience. Doris folded her arms. Ed turned a blind into an eye. The Simmons boys froze mid-whisper on a tailgate. Swagger hates witnesses. He tried to swell again, then felt the room, our street, hand him a mirror. There's a sound a lie makes when the show is over. It's the same sound a tire makes when it kisses a nail. Quiet, then flat. His shoulders dropped a half inch, the truth stealing inches he couldn't win back. He looked at the paper, at me, at the house I'd nailed together board by board. The math didn't move, and for the first time he realized this wasn't his scene to direct. He left first, of course, rocks spitting, tail lights loud. Linda tried to step into the space he left. "We can do counseling. We can fix this." I didn't argue with hope dressed as delay. I stood, not to loom, to end. "No shouting, no scene," I said, mostly for me. Then I turned toward the house, the same door I've walked through 1,000 times after long days and short tempers, the door that still sticks in summer if you don't lift just right. My feet knew the boards. The porch didn't creak. The night air bit and cleared. Behind me, her voice tried my name in 3 different keys. None of them fit the lock anymore. Some chapters don't close with thunder. They close with footsteps that don't stall. I crossed the threshold without slamming a thing. The handle settled back to quiet. In that quiet, the choice held. I wouldn't save what refused to be honest. I'd save myself. But the quiet has a way of echoing, and the town was still listening. The yard felt like a field after the storm, fences still standing, branches heavier, air washed clean. Tom didn't clap or grin. He handed me a mug and said what a good friend says when you don't need speeches. "You did right." I nodded. Right doesn't feel like fireworks. It feels like a hollow that finally has a name. We sat in the old rockers I built the year Mom passed, listening to Maple Creek breathe again. Distant TV, a dog giving up on barking, the wind working the chimes next door. Winning? That's for games. This was something else. I let the ache sit where it belonged and didn't treat it like a problem to fix. A man can be both steady and sad. Out past the trees, the highway hummed like a low promise. Inside, the house waited the way a shop does before first cut. Tools in their places, bench swept, light steady, not joy, not despair, just room to begin again. But some stories don't end just because you stop telling them. The yard was still holding its breath when Janet's text lit my phone. Sharon filed, Rick's cooked. I read it twice, waiting for that hot rush people promise revenge will bring. It didn't show. I walked a thumb along the scar in the porch rail, the one I never sanded smooth on purpose, remembering why I leave a flaw sometimes, so I don't forget what wood can survive. The street sounded normal again. Somewhere down the block, a game show laughed at its own jokes. I wasn't lighter. I was clearer. Rick going down didn't fix my house, my hands, or the empty chair at the table. Justice is a tool, not a home. It closes a door. It doesn't warm a room. I stood there and let the thought land where anger had been living rent-free. Revenge isn't medicine. It's a stunt that looks like healing from far away. The ache didn't leave, but it stopped driving. I could hear my own breath again. That was enough. Until the phone rang the next morning, with a voice I didn't expect. Morning slid under the shop door in a pale stripe. I turned the heater on low and laid a cherry board across the bench. The grain rose under my palm like a map I still knew how to read. Radio found a station that minds its manners. I tore a fresh strip of 220 and started small circles. Light even, no hurry. Dust lifted like quiet snow and settled everywhere, the honest kind of mess that comes from work. My shoulders dropped an inch. Men like me get lost when we stop making things. The world starts naming you, and you forget to answer for yourself. With each pass, the board went from rough to almost kind. Edges softened. Color warmed. I wasn't thinking about him. I wasn't even thinking about her. I was thinking about fit, mortise and tenon, clean lines, weight where it belongs. I'm not the thing in the room, I thought. I'm the man who builds it. The whisper of the paper agreed. Then the phone buzzed, a call that would frame everything differently. Around noon, a number I didn't know came up. Mr. Miller, this is Sharon Howell. Her voice was steady in that way tired people learn. She didn't offer gossip. She offered thanks. You saved me and my kids a deeper hole. I leaned against the bench and let her talk, about accounts that never balanced, about a smile that always had a bill attached, about shame that keeps you quiet until it doesn't. I told her I was sorry for their hurt and meant it across both kitchens. No victory dance, no trading of scars like trophies. Just respect sent across a line that had seen enough damage. We didn't promise to stay in touch. We promised to stand up straight. 2 houses, same weather. 2 parents deciding dignity is cheaper than bitterness over time. When we hung up, the shop felt a little less like a bunker and a little more like a place to build from. That call didn't fix much. It framed it. And once a frame is square, you can finally build again. Tom knocked twice and walked in with a screwdriver and a look that said, "Nothing dramatic, just a hinge." The pantry door had been whining for months, a small complaint I kept stepping over. We pulled the pins, wiped the grit, set a little oil in the knuckles, and tightened the screws a quarter turn. The swing came back smooth, quiet as a good breath. We stood there, 2 men watching a door behave like it used to and didn't pretend it was just hardware. "Funny," Tom said, "how a tiny grind wears you down." I nodded. Little fixes don't headline a life, but they keep the frame true. We poured coffee, leaned on the counter, and listened to the house exhale, the hum of the heater, the polite tick of the clock, the new silence where the squeak used to live. My shoulders let go of another notch I didn't know they were holding. A hinge isn't a miracle. It's a reminder. Care in small places adds up. Before he left, Tom asked the kind of question that tests if a man's coming back to the world. Church potluck next week? I could see it clear. Folding tables in a bright hall, kids chasing each other, Mary's lemon bars vanishing in 12 minutes, paper cups sweating tea. For weeks I'd been a headline. Maybe it was time to be a neighbor again. Maybe, I said, and felt the word land softer than I expected. Not a parade, a permission. After he drove off, I stood in the doorway between the shop and the kitchen, half in sawdust, half in lamplight. The pantry door glided shut like it learned some manners. I pictured walking into that hall, not to explain anything, just to carry a dish and take a seat where chairs scrape and people laugh too loud. The house felt bigger by one room inside me I hadn't opened in a while. I set the sandpaper down and let that door swing. Quiet, easy, open. That maybe about the potluck was still warming in my chest when a Honda slid into the drive too fast. Sarah. She stepped out with a small suitcase and that look grown kids get when they're braver than they feel. We met in the doorway and hugged like people trying to remember a language. Awkward, then right. Inside, we sat at the kitchen table I built when she was 5, the one her feet used to swing under. She studied my face like a blueprint, checking for cracks. I poured coffee we didn't drink. The heater clicked on. The house listened with us. She took my hand, small fingers I used to guide across parking lots, and squeezed once. "I'm here," she said. 2 words that set a chair back on all 4 legs. I didn't sell a speech. I let the room hold that sentence until it fit. Men like me don't need parades. We need presence. And my daughter was sitting right in front of me. She didn't come for a fight. She came with receipts. Her phone lit the table with photos from a closet I couldn't reach. Statements, dates, even a printed email I recognized by its stain. "Did Mom hide these?" she asked, careful, not cruel. I nodded once. Men who build trust what fits, and the pieces finally started to click. "I needed to know the truth," she said, not accusing, just steady. We scrolled through Thursdays that lined up with the holes in our bank, with the quiet in my house, with the smile that never reached her mother's eyes. The story wasn't cleaner, but it was clearer. Proof doesn't heal a wound, it stops the bleeding. I felt the anger step back so judgment could stand up straighter. I wasn't asking my daughter to pick a side. I was asking her to see the frame. And she did. Faith doesn't return with fireworks. It walks in carrying a box of labeled parts and sets them down. We moved to the shop because talking is easier when your hands are busy. I set a cherry board on the bench and handed her a strip of 220. With the grain, I said, and watched her first passes. Too hard, then too soft, the way new grief moves. I set my hand over hers, light pressure, slow circles. Even strokes, don't force it. Let the wood tell you what it needs. The heater hummed. The radio found a polite steel guitar. Dust lifted in the light like a weather you could breathe. She glanced at me, measuring if I was okay, and I nodded at the board so she could nod back without crying. After a minute, the whisper changed. The surface went from stubborn to willing. She smiled small. I feel it. Exactly. Patience isn't just a word. It has a texture. You can hear when it's right. I stepped back and let her finish the pass herself. She learned the shape of steady. By late afternoon, the porch had a little spring in it. Tom showed up with extra pie, nobody bakes that much by accident, and 2 forks. We sat under a sky trying to remember blue and traded stories that don't make headlines. His wife's crooked laugh, the grocery list she wrote like a battle plan, Sarah's grade school science fair volcano that blew batter onto the ceiling. We didn't fix the past. We named the rooms that still felt like home. The yard sounded alive again. Somebody mowing too early, a screen door talking back, a dog deciding to forgive the mailman. The house didn't feel empty with 3 chairs filled and nobody acting brave. Sarah leaned back, shoulders down a notch, eyes softer. Tom pushed the pie tin toward her like a sacrament for regular people. I looked at these two and felt the math change. No crowd, no speech, no victory lap, just a small circle, solid truth, and enough room to breathe. Then her phone started buzzing in quick little bursts, name on the screen we both knew by heart. Sarah stared at it, jaw tight, and I did the hardest thing a father can do. Nothing. I didn't coach. I didn't plead. I let her own the moment. The heater clicked off. The house went still enough to hear choices forming. She flipped the phone face down, then stood, walked it to the mudroom, and set it on the shelf with the gloves and the flashlight. I need time, she said, not asking permission. That was her line in the sand, not mine. I felt pride and sorrow shake hands in my chest. Boundaries aren't cruel, they're care with edges. She came back to the table and picked up the sandpaper like she meant it. The radio carried on. The day didn't crack. It deepened. A good fence doesn't keep love out, it keeps chaos from trampling the yard. She set the fence. I kept the gate open. After Sarah set her phone down and came back to the table, Janet called. Her voice was steady as a level. Rough estimate, Ethan. We can likely recover around 28. Not all. Enough. I looked at my daughter so she could read my face. We'll call the rest tuition, I said, and let the word settle. Men like me understand paying for lessons. Some you learn with busted knuckles, some with money you thought was safe. Sarah searched my eyes for a crack that wasn't there. I felt it, sure, but I didn't break. I told her what I wish someone had told me years ago. You don't get to choose all your losses. You do get to choose what they teach you. She nodded once, like a student who finally sees the board. The ache didn't leave, but it changed shape. Not a hole, a cost. And the payoff was simple. Loss converted to wisdom. It wasn't victory, it was footing. And footing is how you keep building. When the house got quiet, I went back to the bench. The rocking chair waited like a promise I owed myself. I eased a thumb along the armrest and laid a thin skin of oil, slow and even, until the cherry lifted a soft glow. Nothing flashy, just honest. The grain came alive the way a face does when it remembers its name. My reflection looked back. Older, lined, not broken. I checked the runners, rocked once, listened for chatter. None. I set a pad under one foot, shaved a whisper off the heel, and felt the balance click. Men like me don't need applause. We need the feel of something finished that will hold a body at midnight. The chair breathed on its own. So did I. I wasn't a prop in somebody else's story. I was the pair of hands that make a room stand up straight. The words rose without effort and fit where rage used to live. I am the carpenter. I packed the retainer receipt and a couple of forms into the truck and rolled to the post office, the one with the flag rope that squeaks. Maple Creek looked like itself again. Plow lines on Main, a kid dragging a sled through gravel, somebody arguing kindly about gas prices. Mary slid a small tin across the counter. "Accidentally made too many lemon bars," she said with a smile that didn't pry. "That's small-town code for, I see you, I'm not here to pick at scabs." I took a bite in the parking lot. Sugar, sunlight, and nowhere to be but here. A few folks nodded the way men do. Chin, eyes, done. Not gossip. Welcome. The story had stopped being spectacle and started being weather, something that came and went and left the town standing. I sat there with the window down and felt a simple thing return. Belonging. No speeches. No sides. Just the kind of hello that doesn't ask for details. On the way back, Tom asked if I could drop him at the cemetery, his wife's day. I didn't fill the ride with talk. The heater ticked. A crow argued with the wind. He said he'd be a bit, and I said I'd wait. Men like us don't always need words. We need someone who stays. I watched a couple swap out plastic flowers for real ones, small rebellion against cheap. Tom came back with red eyes and a jaw set for the drive home. I didn't ask a single thing. We listened to the ball game without caring who was up. When the announcer ran out of breath, the silence finished the inning. Respect isn't a speech, it's room for grief to sit without being fixed. He patted the dashboard once, a thank you to a truck that gets you there and back. I turned onto Maple Creek Road and let the quiet carry us the rest of the way, heavy and right. Late afternoon, Janet texted again. She wrote an apology. Want me to bring it by? I stared at the message, then at the front walk where crocuses pushed through last year's leaves, stubborn and purple. Spring doesn't ask permission, it shows up. Hold it for now, I typed back. Not every hook deserves your mouth. Some lines pull you back into water you finally swam out of. I stood on the porch and let the air sting my eyes the way honesty does. Maybe the letter said everything I wanted months ago. Maybe it said nothing that could help today. Either way, I had a house that still stood, a daughter who sanded with the grain, a friend who fixes hinges and waits in parking lots. I didn't need yesterday retranslated. I needed tomorrow given room. I set the phone down, breathed in the cold, and let the crocuses finish their small sermon. Keep going. The choice I made on the porch carried into morning. A loud pickup rolled past the house, the kind that used to make my chest jump, and I didn't twitch. Bacon drifted over from next door, that easy Saturday smell that forgives a lot. A sparrow hopped along the rail like it owned the place, testing each board I nailed down years ago. I stayed seated, coffee warm in my hands, eyes soft on the street that had already seen enough. Men like me collect reflexes the way we collect tools. Some you keep, some you set back on the rack. The habit of checking locks, peeking through blinds, waiting for the next hit, I felt it reach for me and miss. The yard didn't threaten, it just breathed. The mug cooled a little. The sparrow flew off to wherever sparrows go when work calls. I let my shoulders drop and didn't stand. I stayed in the chair and let the morning hold. Fear could go knock on someone else's door. Not an hour later, the phone rang with a voice I like. "Ethan, it's Cal Turner. My daughter's getting married. I want the big table, the one we talked about if she ever found a good man." Weddings change the air. I pulled a pad, sketched fast. 8 chairs, wide rails, breadboard ends, room for elbows and arguments and grace. We talked stain versus natural, delivery dates that won't step on rehearsals, and I started counting lumber in my head like I was back at the yard. Men like me get well by building something that outlasts the day. Cal laughed once, the good kind, and we shook hands over the phone the old way. Price fair, schedule tight, work honest. I could see it already. Plates, hands, stories, a future set on wood that won't sag. I wrote his name on the board with a carpenter's pencil and underlined it twice. That order felt like tomorrow laid flat on the table, ready for work. Sarah tugged my sleeve toward the spare room. "Come look." Against the wall stood a walnut-stained bookshelf, hair uneven, one proud joint if you knew where to look, and a frame that didn't wobble when I leaned a shoulder into it. She watched my face the way daughters do, hope mixed with a flinch. "Shelf pins line up nice," I said, running a thumb along the edge. "Knock this corner down 2 passes, slow oil, wipe with the grain. Let the wood tell you when to stop. We worked side by side, not rushing, not apologizing. Oil deepened the color, the edges learned some manners. She wrote her name inside the back rail where only we'd ever see it. "It's not perfect," she said, half warning, half dare. I shrugged. "Neither am I. But look, it stands." She laughed, the sound I'd been missing. "I'll get better," she said, and this time she believed herself. I didn't add a lesson. The shelf taught it. Janet checked in near lunch. "Arraignment set for next month. Sharon's got the accounts stabilized." Good news that doesn't strut. I opened the shop door and let a patient slice of spring slide in. The old me would have celebrated by replaying the worst parts, picking at them like a scab. The man I'm choosing to be reached for the sandpaper instead. I set a board on the bench, sighted along the edge, and took a clean pass. That whisper under your hands, the one that says you're doing it right, filled the room better than any speech about karma. Sarah wandered in, borrowed my pencil, and marked a cut line without asking if she could. That felt like a blessing. Justice was moving on its timetable. Mine was simpler: measure, cut, fit, repeat. I swept the floor because a clean shop tells the truth. I didn't pick up the grudge, I picked up the paper. The work held me in the place anger used to stand. By late afternoon, the rocking chair told me it was ready. You can feel it. No fight in the joints, runners tracking true, arms asking for a hand to rest there. I eased it into the doorway where the light goes warm and gave it the test every chair earns. Sit, rock, listen. The creak was the good kind, wood saying hello to itself. I adjusted one felt pad, shaved a whisper off the heel, and the rhythm lined up with my breathing. No chatter, no bite, just a slow swing that could carry a tired body through a hard night. Sarah watched from the kitchen, smiling like she'd seen a weather change. I didn't call it a victory. I called it finished. I wiped a final thin coat of oil and caught my reflection. Older, lined, steady. For the first time in a long time, I heard a clean rhythm in that room, peace finding its seat, and a man who could finally sit with it. The next morning, I slid the rocking chair into the truck like a sleeping child and drove over to Birch Street. Fresh paint on the porch, a stroller by the steps, the kind of new life that makes a neighborhood softer. The husband opened the door with a smear of formula on his shirt, the wife with tired eyes that still tried to be polite. We set the chair by the window where the light is gentle at 2 a.m. I showed him how to ease the rock, small arcs, not a swing, how to listen for the good creak that tells a baby the world is steady. He practiced once, then twice. The rhythm took. The baby settled. You could feel the house take a breath. I rubbed a cloth across the arm one last time and told them what I wish I'd believed sooner. Sleep when you can, speak soft when you can't, love anyway. The husband grinned like a man who just found a tool that fits his hand. Driving back through Maple Creek felt like paging a postcard. Church steeple cutting the sky. Kids tossing a football too close to the street. Somebody grilling even though spring wasn't official yet. My phone buzzed. Mary from the post office. Potluck Friday? I didn't answer right away. I let the truck idle in front of the house and stood on the porch like a man at a threshold. Because I was. For weeks I'd been the center of a storm. Now the weather had moved on, and the town was still here, asking me to come eat casseroles and tell small stories. I pictured paper plates bending under friendly weight, lemon bars vanishing in 12 minutes, the comfort of names you don't have to explain. I typed, "maybe," and set the phone down. Inside, Sarah laughed at something Tom said. The sound traveled through the screen door and landed easy. The room in me that had been closed for repairs opened a little and waited. Twilight slid across the yard and into the shop. I stood in the doorway where sawdust meets linoleum, half in the life I build with my hands, half in the life that keeps the lights on and the coffee hot. The radio mumbled a ballad that didn't ask for attention. Far off, a freight train pulled the night forward like it always does. I ran my palm along the bench, felt the nicked places, and left them. Not every scar needs sanding. I breathed out longer than I breathed in. The chair sat finished behind me. The kitchen glowed ahead. Both were mine. I didn't bargain with the past or make promises to the future. I checked the windows, folded the rag, and flipped the switch. The shop light went dark, and the quiet didn't scare me. I crossed the threshold, no speech, no ceremony, just a man walking into his own house, steady. The floor knew my step. The door found its latch, and I let the evening hold. I paused at the doorway and laid my palm on the frame I hung years ago. The grain answered back, quiet, certain, the way wood tells you when you've done it right. Out by the walk, crocuses pushed through last year's frost, small purple flags that don't ask permission. Keep going, they said, and for once I listened. I took a breath and counted what left and what stayed. Money went, illusions went, but I kept my name. I kept my craft. I kept the part of me that knows how to make something hold. That's enough to start again. I looked around the house that survived the weather, the shop that kept the lights on inside my chest, and said it like a final fit that clicks home without force. I'm not the furniture. I'm the carpenter, the man who builds what stays. If you've ever stood in your own doorway and had to choose who you'll be next, tell me in the comments. 1 for revenge, 2 for dignity. And hit subscribe. The shop light's still on. The story's not over.